figure out how to release the results properly. And so in politics, media and narrative is king. And so I think Klobuchar might get some props for having the courage to go first and not wait until everyone else had gone.
Or is it? And in terms of who we've heard from tonight, I mean, what do you think in terms of what they actually said? Is there somebody who sort of managed to punch through and can say that they've owned tonight, even if they don't have the results yet to back it up?
I think Bernie Sanders, you can just hear the crowd's energy, and he has a very consistent message that he has been saying for decades, and I think voters recognize that. They know that he stands true to his principles, even if many people think they're too far left, but he's kind of the opposite of Donald Trump, and I think his campaign will be still making that electability argument, which is very important in this party. And I think Joe Biden's speech did not seem to kind of hit full metal in terms of it just sounded a little flat. And I think he is probably very disappointed that from what the local media is reporting, that he did so poorly. And so I think Bernie Sanders has that. If you've been saying the same thing for decades, you have it down pat, and his supporters, they agree with every word.
Daniel Lippman, thank you very much. So yeah, Bernie Sanders certainly knows what he's saying by now, but what you really sense in the room with him and what we heard tonight when he gave that speech is the huge enthusiasm behind him, which so many people have said has been lacking from Joe Biden. And it could be that sort of status, that presumptive nominee status, is something that Joe Biden now has to let go of and fight harder to really stay in the race out of Iowa. Now let's cross to the other side of the country. From Monterey in California is the Democratic strategist Spencer Critchley. So is this the Democrats in disarray tonight, as so many Republicans are claiming?
No, I don't think so. I think this is just typical sort of grasping at straws. Coming from people living inside a gigantic and notably fragile glass house from one of the most incompetent administrations in history, clearly something's gone very wrong, but I agree with previous commentators that this will be forgotten fairly soon. We don't know what this is. It could be some kind of software glitch, a failure of this new app, who knows. I think other news stories will displace this soon enough.
You have candidates themselves, like Joe Biden, writing letters to the Iowa Democratic people saying this isn't good enough. Could this cause a storm, or do you think when we finally do get those results, everyone will move on very quickly?
I think so. I mean, campaigns move so fast, especially during this cluster of early primaries, so they're not going to have time to be fighting over.
Looks like is certainly not doing as well as he would have hoped tonight. What does that say for what he needs to do next? Rob Griffin, Research Director at the Democracy Fund, you've been joining us throughout the evening. We've both seen things take an unexpected turn. Does he need to change his approach now?
I don't know if he needs to change his approach. I mean, I think he needs to stay strong with the groups that he's already been strong with. So what he really doesn't want to see, if I had to say there's one thing, he doesn't want to see a deterioration of his popularity with African Americans, and he also doesn't want to see a deterioration of his popularity with older voters. These are two serious areas of strength for him, both because older people tend to show up at the polls all the time, and a lot of the states that are coming up in the next races have heavily African American populations, so I'm thinking really about Super Tuesday here. So again, if he can hold on to those constituencies as he heads into Super Tuesday, he's still going to be feeling pretty good about how things are going.
He is the person who has said, I'm the one who can beat Donald Trump. Is it time for him to start and show that mettle, to show that the performance matches that promise? Has he done that?
I think this is certainly give her a little bit more momentum to see if she can convince people that she's actually the candidate the Democrats should go with in 2020.
Rob, thank you. So Elizabeth Warren used her speech in the last half hour to contrast her candidacy with the incumbent president's alleged corruption. So that looked and sounded very much like a victory speech from former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg. Certainly the tone very victorious there, but it is worth reminding everybody that we haven't had official results yet. Local media, the Des Moines Register, is putting Pete Buttigieg at 24%. He was polling prior to that at 16%, so you can perhaps understand why there would be a tone of celebration there. But what we've had over the past hour is an avalanche of these victory speeches that sound very much like each of these candidates has won the Iowa caucuses. We don't know officially who has won yet, but we're certainly getting a sense of the shape of things, aren't we, Rob Griffin, Research Director at the Democracy Fund? So it looks like, without anything official yet, that Bernie Sanders may come out on top, as a lot of predictions said, and that certainly among the front runners, Joe Biden is kind of far down.
Yeah, no, again, it's got to be a disappointment for the Joe Biden camp tonight, and I'm sure Bernie Sanders and as well as Pete Buttigieg, their campaigns are going to be really happy with these results. They're going to allow them to, I think, attack Biden maybe where he's been seen as strongest. It's around some of these electability arguments. It's going to allow them to move forward and just try to capitalize on sort of the win that they had here.
Now, the Republicans are claiming a victory for a different reason, saying that this is an absolute mess, Democrats. You couldn't even get this right. Then we've got a Donald Trump tweet saying that the big win for us in Iowa tonight. Thank you. Is there substance to this crowing of the Democrats messed up here?
I think it was pretty unlikely that Donald Trump was not going to be able to put in something, a little bit of a jab against the Democratic Party when they're having a night where they're kind of looking like they're in disarray. So that doesn't maybe surprise me too much. Now, I think the real question is coming out of this whether tonight's events are really that big of a problem, or as we were just talking about off air just a little bit, how much this could be an issue down the road if it turns into a brokered convention.
But this doesn't look good, does it? I mean, this is like a huge build-up to this moment. Months of campaigning, millions of dollars.
Yeah.
They've got to get it right on the night.
Yeah. I mean, I always like to zoom out just a little bit and remind folks how few Americans actually pay attention to politics at this point in the race. There's a lot of junkies who are going to be all over this. There's the news media who is really focused on this stuff. A lot of the American public actually doesn't check in, and this is going to shock a lot of people, until July. So they're really not paying as much attention as people think. So again, I think this is going to be a moment that certainly the Democratic Party didn't want. It's going to fade into the background pretty quickly as more events sort of come down the road.
So let's look at the shape of this tonight. Again, not official, local media. Bernie Sanders, 28%. Elizabeth Warren, 25%. And then you have Pete Buttigieg, 24%, so very close between those two potentially. Amy Klobuchar, 12%. She's going to be very happy with that. She said in her speech, punching above her weight. Joe Biden underneath Amy Klobuchar with 11%. What shape of this very broad race is emerging, do you think, tonight?
Well, so I think the biggest thing to talk about that we would kind of know for certain is that this raises the possibility that there's not going to be any candidate that gets to 50% by the time that we get to the convention, right? So, again, it's still possible that there's candidates that could succeed later and run away with it, but this does raise the possibility that happen. That's not something that's happening.
Understand why, for different reasons. Republicans really saying, Democrats, what have you done? You've mucked this up. This was the first caucus, the first big moment, and we're still here waiting for results. Let's cross now to Tampa, Florida, and speak to Anna Paulina Luna, a Republican who's running for Congress there. So is this a night where we can say Democrats in disarray and that this hasn't provided the certainty, certainly by this stage, that it was supposed to?
I absolutely think that they're definitely sweating right now. This is something that the Democrat Party really anticipated would be a strong turnout. We didn't see that. Then their entire process for counting the votes was messed up. So right now, I definitely think that, whether or not they want to come out with those results in the next hour, tomorrow, whatever it is, it's not a good start for them moving forward, especially in 2020.
But is this going to be perceived as a blip? I mean, is this something that's going to stay with them as soon as we get those results? Then everybody is moving on very quickly to New Hampshire. Or is this going to stay with the Democrats, do you think?
I think it's going to stay with them, and I say that because, large in part what I still do for my day job, aside from my campaign, is I do national outreach. And what we're seeing is that the Democrat Party, they've gone so extreme, whether it's on topics of, late-term abortion, a complete socialist policy, that it's really alienated a lot of people. And, the one thing that we do have here in the media and on social media here in the United States is a large aspect of censorship, and that's backfiring. People don't want that. People want their freedom of speech, and frankly, I don't think that it's going to work out in their favor in 2020.
So if we take the local media reports of the shape that this race has taken tonight here in Iowa, then you potentially have the two leading candidates being very much the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. As a Republican, how do you feel about that? That seems to be the side with the momentum. Momentum could be the deciding factor in the 2020 election.
I mean, there's no, there is no question in my mind that people have a decision to make in 2020. Either they vote for a radicalized version of what the Democrat Party used to be, or they vote essentially for the founding principles of what we in the United States were based on, and that is pro-life, pro-God, pro-government, or not pro-government, but pro-gun, and an anti-socialist agenda. And right now, I mean, that's something that we see every single day. And I can say that I'm not running a presidential, but I am running a congressional, and this trickles down to every aspect of the normal person's life. We definitely care about it. We're passionate about it. And I do hope that it continues like this for the Democrat Party, because frankly, there's a lot of people that don't realize that at the end of the day, when people keep promising free things, that someone has to pick up the tab. And that's going to be my generation and future generations.
But does it concern you that the driving force, that the energy really seems to be behind this sentiment of get rid of Donald Trump? That is the priority for Democrats. And if they want that badly enough, that becomes what Donald Trump had in 2016. It becomes that energy and that momentum that ultimately won him the election. Do you think that that now lies potentially with the Democrats? Is that a problem for Republicans?
I don't think it is a problem for Republicans, and I say that because from the beginning, when Donald Trump was elected and really leading up to the election in 2016, they didn't want him. They never wanted him. They attempted to impeach him. I mean, we're still going through with it now. I think everyone has post-traumatic stress disorder from what the DNC has really done back in 2016. So in my opinion, they can try. I think that it's definitely something that they are using to try to rally their own base, but I don't think it's going to be effective because, frankly, people are exhausted. No one wants to fight anymore. People are tired of the divisive politics. And it is, in my opinion, and I do try to look at both perspectives. I always listen to both sides of the argument. And it's been, in my opinion, that it's been something that's been pushed largely from the DNC because they lost the 2016 election. I do think it will be something that backfires, but I don't think the president has anything to worry about moving forward in 2020. And if you want to check out what's really happening here, look at the crowds that he's pulling into some of these rallies. That is unprecedented in U.S. history, I'm pretty sure.
But whoever eventually is the winner here in Iowa tonight, you have national polls saying that whether it is Pete Buttigieg, whether it is Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, that they will all beat Donald Trump in a general election. He must be concerned by those polls. He must be concerned that momentum appears to be on the Democrat side, and it's going to be hard for him to recreate that magic of 2016 when he is now the establishment.
I think what's interesting is that the 2016 poll said the very same thing, that Hillary Clinton would be beating out Donald Trump. And right now, when we look at what's happening with President Trump and how he's activated the populist movement, I think that what we're seeing is there's people that are part of the establishment that don't like outsider candidates like myself, like President Donald Trump, because they're essentially, at the end of the day, not a controlled politician. And I think that's exactly what this country needs, and that's why he's not going to be worrying about anything moving into 2020. There's so many people, and I can tell you from working in outreach, I'm not sitting here, I'm not getting paid for this, that believe in this man because of what he's done for our country, not just here, but on a national stage. They're going to support him. They will stand in 10, 15 degree weather to come out to his rallies, and that's something that no other president in the history of the United States, maybe aside from Reagan, has been able to do in a very long time. He's targeting the older generation, he's targeting millennials, he's targeting Gen Z, and these people are going to come out to vote for him in 2020. I don't think that anyone that the DNC puts up will be able to stand up what Trump is going to bring to the table in 2020.
Okay, Anna, Paulina, Luna, thank you very much for your time. And thank you for watching this special program from the Iowa caucuses. I'm sorry we couldn't bring you results. We were hoping to have had those a long time ago. The delay, we still don't know the details of it, is causing quite a storm here among candidates themselves. What it has done is created a void for them to all leave Iowa, having effectively done victory speeches. We've heard 6 so far, very triumphant in tone as they leave Iowa and all the hard work, the campaigning that's gone in for over a year now, and move on to New Hampshire. They've all claimed to have come out of here with that crucial thing, momentum. Of course, the results will matter. And the way this is shaping at the moment, it looks like it's been a very good night for Senator Bernie Sanders. The polls were predicting that. It looks like it's been a better night than expected for Senator Elizabeth Warren, who it seems like, according to local media, may have come in second. Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, both again doing better than the polls have suggested. There is one person, though, leaving Iowa tonight with really much lower than the expectations were suggesting. He was the presumptive nominee for so long. Joe Biden, former vice president, it seems could be the one limping out of Iowa with a much lower result than